and welcome back to Identity Insights by Indicio. I'm your host, Tim Spring, and today I'm joined by Indicio's VP of Business Development, James Schulte, and he is here to discuss identity verification, including how it typically works and how the general process can be improved with verifiable credentials. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today, James. For those unfamiliar, would you give us a quick explanation of what identity verification, or IDV, is?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me today. So in the identity industry, identity verification or IDV, it simply means the process of verifying that a person is who they're claiming to be. Usually this involves some sort of confirmation of the validity of personal information or documentation that the person has provided. And that's compared with some sort of reliable data source. So this can be done with a number of components. Typically, there's a form of document verification where a document is verified. So it could be a passport, it could be a driver's license, some sort of national ID card or form of identification. Um, Typically, these documents have security features that are checked to confirm their authenticity. So things like holograms or specific watermarks on the documents. You've probably seen it on your passport. There's really the cool shiny parts, um, or areas of documents that are machine readable, so referred to as the MRZ zone. And newer passports have um, chips in them. So they're called biometric passports with a chip inside that holds demographic information about the passport holder and biometric information. And a lot of mobile devices now have NFC chip reading capability. So as part of document verification, pulling the information from that chip. Um, so the next one, biometric verification. This is typically where biometrics are used to match against some sort of data source, typically that provided document. So this could be facial recognition, this could be fingerprinting, or something as complex as iris scanning. Then you've got things like liveness detection. So how do you know that the person holding the document, presenting their document virtually or sending a picture of their document, is actually the person holding the document, and that they're not spoofing the system with a physical photo held up to the camera, or even a deep fake video, which is becoming a growing problem. There's been some recent cases where a lot of money has been lost because someone used a video to pretend to be someone else. So liveness detection, typically where you look at the camera and you move your head in different directions to prove that you're alive and actually there and present. Then there's also database verification where they're doing cross-checking of information against authoritative data sources. So those could be government databases that they are licensed to compare with, or registries or public key directories. And there are providers that have access to those databases, so they can run the information by there. So those are centralized data sources that act as essentially as a witness to the data that's being presented. So in a nutshell, that's what ID verification is.
All right, interesting. So I've heard the term recently, IDV silos. I was wondering if you could talk a bit about that in terms of what they are and what they do.
Yeah, so this is one of the challenges that comes with identity verification. Um, and this stems from there being many different data sources and also a lot of different identity verification providers. A lot of these identity verification systems have their own proprietary methods of performing those checks or validating that data between those databases. Um, when individuals receive that verification, that information is typically stuck within that context and isn't necessarily reusable in different contexts, because those identity verification steps don't necessarily follow like a standardized process, which comes as a result of private sector companies having their own proprietary spin on how it's done. So that's a natural result of that. But this often leads to redundant ID verification needing to be performed, even though if you've been verified in another context, if it's not transportable, you have to do it again here and do it again here. And it just creates bad user experience and can be costly for the organizations that have to leverage those IDV services. Another interesting thing that I've heard from my conversations is that these siloed systems can also lead to data privacy risks simply because the users have to share that sensitive data again and again in different contexts. And the more they're sharing that information in different areas, it just widens the area in which their data can be breached.
Okay, interesting. So obviously, we've heard a little bit before about verifiable credentials helping in terms of these siloed systems and being able to bridge that gap. I was curious if you could explain their role as you see it in these identity verification systems.
Yeah, that's a great question. So how does identity verification fit into, verifiable credential infrastructures? Um, kind of a comparison that you can make is, think of identity verification as like the quality, the quality and source. Think of it as like a spring of water, and verifiable credentials are like the new fancy pipe to transport that water. Um, the water is in the pipe is only as good as the water that's coming into it from that source. So identity verification is what happens typically in the beginning process when a verifiable credential is being created. There's something that's typically called identity binding. That means making sure that the credential that's being generated truly belongs to the person that is requesting the credential and that the information is theirs. You wouldn't want Tim Spring to get James Schulte's passport credential or driver's license credential as an example. Um, so that's kind of the connection between the two. Verifiable credentials are are great because they create that transport mechanism for data that makes it tamper resistant. But if the data inside the credential is false, it doesn't matter if it's tamper resistant because it's not correct data. So identity verification is an important first step to make sure the data is authentic, has data integrity. Um, yeah, and then the verifiable credential makes it transportable and reusable in those different contexts. So I'd say that's where the two meet.
All right, perfect. So we've been talking a bit in abstracts, here's what it could do, here's what how it works and what could be improved. Would you have any real world examples or things that we could point to that you could really walk through each step of here's identity verification, here's how the verifiable credentials play in, and the outcomes of that joint system?
Yeah, absolutely. So an example off the top of my head is Aruba, the work that we've been doing with them with the digital travel credential. So travelers who are going to Aruba, they have to fill out something called an ED card, embarkation debarkation card. It's in some ways similar to like a tourist visa type of thing, but it's a website hosted by the government of Aruba that you go to. You have to input your traveler information, where you're going to be staying at, so your hotel address, for example, and you upload passport information. But now, as part of that process, you can be issued a digital travel credential. So using your mobile device, you can um, uh, scan your passport, do that document authentication, and derive that data from the NFC chip in your government issued document. You can perform the liveness detection to prove that you are the person holding your passport. And then it does a match of your face to the biographic information, or sorry, biometric information that's been derived from the chip in the passport. And then it performs a cross check with the ICAO, or sorry, the ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization's public key directory, to confirm that the document truly has been issued by the issuing government. And then you receive your digital travel credential after that identity verification has been done and that cross check has happened. So the traveler then, as part of that ED card process, can share their digital travel credential with the government of Aruba, specifically the Customs and Immigration or the Border Authority, ahead of time. And that can be preloaded into their biometric e-gate system so that when you arrive, um, you've already been essentially pre-cleared, and you walk right up to the biometric e-gate, and there would be a camera that sees your face, compares that biometric data point to the biometric information that you shared as part of your DTC ahead of time, and then verifies this person's been pre-cleared, and they can pass through. So it removes the need for physical documents needing to be pulled out and presented, makes it a lot smoother, a smoother experience on the ground there. So that's an example of where the ID verification and the verifiable credential component meets to create a smooth user experience. Another great example, over in India, the DigiYatra solution, very similar in the sense that ID verification is done for travelers, to have a verifiable credential that allows um, for passage through airports domestically. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities in air travel and for border technology. But I would say that the frontier is also for financial institutions to allow for transactions, for KYC, for account access, all sorts of things. Um, so yeah, those are a couple off the top of my head.
All right. No, that sounds super exciting. And obviously, I appreciate you going into detail into, each step. And it's cool that we can now travel to Aruba through this new digital means. So obviously that's a pretty big example and a big use case, right? Like that's a whole country that has adopted this system. I'm curious if anybody's interested in getting started, is there like an easy way to do it? Is it like you need this big system thing? What would the getting started part look like?
Yeah, so it's not hard to get started. As part of our Indicio proven solution suite, this capability is yeah is made possible. Easy to get started by getting set up with the APIs and SDKs needed to, if you need a standalone system, easy to spin that up. But with the SDKs, you can integrate that into your existing applications with those capabilities to do the identity verification and the verifiable credential capabilities. So I would say that's a really easy way to get started, and we'd be happy to talk through your use case and scope it out and yeah, get it up and running. It can be hosted on-prem, it can be run hybrid in a SaaS type model, uh, or in cloud model, or hybrid, depending on what you need. That's the beauty of Proven. It's modular as well, so if there's only certain components that you need, it can be dynamically used.
Perfect. So if someone were ready to take that next step and get started looking at a solution, where would you suggest they go to learn some more?
Yeah, so first I'd recommend that they read a recent blog post from our very own Trevor Butterworth, who wrote a blog titled Bring Your Own Biometrics, which talks about the combination of biometrics and verifiable credentials and how that all fits together, which I think lines up nicely with our conversation today. I'd also read another recent blog from our very own Helen Garneau, who wrote about, when you're starting a deployment, starting small and scaling. That's I think another good step. Also, please feel free to talk to our team. We'd love to get started talking through your use case and get you set up with what you need to bring your idea to life.
Awesome. Well, that's about our time for today. Thank you so much again for joining us, James. If you at home are interested in learning a bit more about decentralized identity and verifiable credential technology, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll continue to bring you some more educational content. And if you have any questions or specific topics that you'd like for us to cover, please go ahead and leave a comment below. We'll be sure to read and address them. Thank you all for watching.